Hello and welcome to the technical video for using tripods at the Department of Film and Television at the University of Bristol. I'm Piers Lee, I'm the lecturer in cinematography, so I'll be leading the teaching throughout the 3 undergraduate years on camera and cinematography. To get started, there's a couple of things you want to know straight away about tripods. We're going to start with the bags because you'll see that the handle's off-center. And that's because when you put the tripod in the bag, the head of the tripod is heavier than the legs. And if you put it in the wrong way, it's going to end up tipping. So that's why they're off-center, and we'll look at that in more detail in a bit. The other thing is our tripods are all named by number. This is Manfrotto number 3. You must make sure, if you're working, that you have the right tripod in the right bag. So they should match up. So when it comes out of the tripod, it should be nice and loose, and that's going to protect it, as I say, from being damaged. Now there are 2 elements to this. There's the head and there's the legs. So the first thing we're going to do is make sure that the handle's nice and loose so that it doesn't trap your legs, and then we're going to open these out. So here we have the head with the pan handle, the legs and the spreader. And the spreader just stops those legs from sliding and the tripod becoming unusable. So first thing is take the pan handle, loosen it off a bit. I like to have it slightly pointing down and away from the head because that means it's not going to get in your way. And then you can also shorten or lengthen the handle here according to what your preference is. So the first thing to look at is getting the legs up to height. Now, the simple way of doing it, the way I do it, is if you kick the spreader up and you bring the legs in, then you can loosen all 3 of the levers here, and then when you lift it up, the whole thing will come as one. Okay? Then you can spread the legs like that and you've got your height. Again, if you want to come up a level, then you can either lift it up to the height you want and then go all the way round, like so. Okay, or if to go down, I pull the spreader up, I hold the head so that I'm in control of it, release all of the levers, always keeping control of the head, and then I can come to the height that I want. So I'm going to set it just about chest height. I'm going to lock it off. I'm going to make sure that the spreader's nice and firmly spread and I've got a good firm base. Okay, so the tripod here is very loose because we've been having it to travel. The pan handle is now in the correct position, pointing slightly down and back. The first thing to notice here is at the back of the tripod head, there's a little sort of spirit level dial, and that's how you make sure that your tripod is going to give you a nice level image. Because if you imagine that I tip it off at an angle, which sometimes we do because we want it to be what's called Dutch or on a tilt, but nothing is going to be flat here when you're operating the camera. So what you want to try and make sure you're doing is you get this level, and using the spirit level, in fact there's a little red dial on there and that will illuminate it. So underneath here you'll see a handle that is a screw handle, and that's how you can control the tripod head's level. Now you only need to loosen it a fraction, okay? And I always hold on to the head or the camera to control it, because if you try and do it all from underneath, or if you try and do it from here, you very, very difficult to control. So one hand on the screwing handle, which will fix it in place, one hand on the camera or on the head, and then you can find that level, put the spirit level in the right spot, and tighten it up just with a couple of turns. And again, there's a light there if you need to see what you're doing. So now we've got our tripod is a nice stable base. Our head is nice and flat. We're very, very loose and wobbly. Now, if you're operating potentially a music video and you want sort of funny, jerky movements, you know, this setting of it very, very loose is ideal. But on the whole, we want resistance because we want to actually be able to operate against something. So there are two places where you would control that. We have the up and down, which is the tilt. We have the left to right, which is the pan. The tension on the pan is controlled here with this dial here, and we can make it more resistant or less resistant by turning the dial. So now you can see that my pan is very, very resistant. Likewise, if I come onto the side here, there's a dial. On the opposite side from the pan handle, I can add the tension in there, and now my pan and my tilt have tension in them. Okay? And that's actually how you would want to operate with a bit of tension and resistance. Now, on the same side as the pan handle, there's actually this dial here. I tend not to use it because what it does is it sets the amount of bounce back. So if I wind that in, it will tend to push the tripod back to central position. I don't like operating with that, so I tend to just turn it off, but that is a personal preference. However, I do work with tension in the pan and in the tilt. So now my tilt and my pan are on the right tension. You have two mechanisms for locking the pan and tilt. So the pan locks here and the tilt locks on the side here by the tension controller for the pan. Now, whenever you're working with a tripod and you're walking away from it, you must lock it. If you don't, what will happen is the camera will tilt forwards and the whole thing could tilt. The tripod is very stable on the axis of the legs, but if I push it towards the point between the two legs, it's pretty unstable. If you have a large camera on here and it tilts forward, you could lose the whole tripod over and you could end up smashing your camera and a very expensive insurance bill. So I'm unlocking my pan and my tilt. I've got the tension correct. The next thing to do is to get the camera onto the tripod. So that is done by using two separate mechanisms on the top, one of which is a tension screw here on the right hand side by the pan handle, and the other one of which is a release button which is on the opposite side here that you can see operating there. So to take this out, you loosen the tension with the right hand screw and you press the release and you slide this plate backwards. Okay, so now the plate is out. If you turn it over, you'll see here that there is actually an indicator that says lens and an arrow. You want that arrow to be pointing towards the lens on the camera. So if I take a camera and I turn it over, I cradle it lovingly like a favourite child, and I put the plate on, I'm going to put that screw into the screw on the bottom. I'm going to have the arrow facing towards the lens. I'm going to gently tighten that with my fingers, but that is not good enough because what I need to do is get that nice and strong. So you're going to need a screwdriver. People often use a coin, but better to use a screwdriver. Get that nice and tight so there's no danger of this moving around and shifting while it's on the tripod. To get this onto the tripod, we reverse the process. The screw is loose, the release is on the side, but we can just slide it in forwards and then we can tighten it up. So this is where you want to check your balance. So loosen off the tilt screw here so that it's able to move freely, and then you can just check whether the camera needs to move. If it's too far forward, it's going to sink. If it's too far back, it's going to sink. So you just sit it nice and stable, and then you can tension it on this side and screw that plate in, and now it's fixed. If you balance it properly, it makes the operating a lot easier. So that's everything. You're ready to go. So to take it apart, we're just going to reverse that quickly. Screw, release, camera off. Going to remove the plate. Like so. We're going to put this back on. We're going to lock that plate in, and we're going to loosen all the tension on the tilt. I'm going to loosen all the tension on the pan. Okay, now that is good to travel, but before you stow the pan on, let's just kick that spreader in. We can unlock all of the levers on the tripod, like so, and all of the levers on the bottom section of the tripod, because these are two-section tripods. Push it down, lock them up, and now you can loosen the pan arm, put the pan arm down, and it's ready to stow in the bag. So when we stow it in the bag again, we want the head to be in the right position. So in these bags here, the head goes towards the top opening. Pop it in there. We check that the number on here matches the number on here, because otherwise our technical team have to sort them all out. We slide it in. Zip it up and put it away. Okay? One thing to note is it's not a great idea when you're working with the tripod to move the tripod with the camera on it. I always recommend take the camera off, move the tripod, then put the camera back on.